Welcome back and thanks for staying with us on the program. Nigeria's unlisted securities markets, as NASD, OTC, announced the admission of the securities of the Nigerian Exchange Group PLC on its trading platform. Now, this comes after the successful demutualization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, now known as the Nigerian Exchange Group. The shares of NGX were made available to be traded by licensed participating institutions or authorized traders registered on the NASD platform on Tuesday, April the 13th. But before we delve into this, let's get some understanding of the unlisted securities markets, and who best to take us through these other than the Chief Executive Officer of NASD OTC PLC. Good evening, Mr. Bola. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent.
So let's just start with understanding the NASD as a licensed self-regulatory organization by the SEC. It's licensed to trade all registered securities within the meaning of the Investment and Securities Act as an OTC securities exchange. But what does this really mean?
What it means is that any security that is registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission is a public security, and any public security, there's a rule by the Securities and Exchange Commission that every single public security must trade through a public outlet, a public market. You have got at least 6 markets that are registered by the SEC to do this. One is the stock exchange, that's the oldest, but then you have NASD, you've got FMDQ, you've got 3 other commodities exchanges as well, and so any of these platforms can actually trade any instrument that is registered by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Now, what that also means is that the Securities and Exchange Commission has vetted these instruments and ensured that they meet a certain standard of disclosure, a certain standard of acceptability to be open to the public to invest in.
Well, recently, the Nigerian Exchange Group was admitted to trade on NASD. Now, what was the debut like?
As you can imagine, the Securities Exchange, the NGX as it is now, or the Nigerian Stock Exchange, started off 61 years ago as a mutualized, limited by guarantee company. And so for the last 60 years, we've operated like that, which means that there are some members of that organization who were guaranteeing the existence and the liabilities of that company. Now it converted into a public company, got itself registered at the Securities and Exchange Commission, and then it becomes a public investable instrument. It has taken roughly about 10 years for this to happen. So you can imagine the kind of interest there would be in both buying and selling that security once it hits the market. So the first 2 days have been quite robust trading going on that security.
What about competition now? Is there no conflict there?
So the shares, I can understand your allusion to competition. Indeed, you have got different segments to any capital market. Any capital market is a continuum. While there will be overlap in terms of what we do, all of us provide investment instruments to investors, and we also assist issuers in raising funding. There is a difference in the approach that we all take to providing these services to both issuers and investors. In the case of NASD, it is based on the principle of creating an orderly environment for investors to buy and sell their shares, and also focused on ensuring that there is broker responsibility to their clients. I believe that the stock exchange probably has the focus of ensuring that the issuers meet a certain standard of reporting to the public, which is not the focus of NASD. So there's a difference in approach, and again, there's a difference in the entry methods into the market. And so ours is a market, and the way it was introduced into the NASD market is that the security itself was introduced for trading as opposed to the Nigerian Stock Exchange itself applying to be listed. So there's a subtle difference in the way it came into the market. And it's not a competition thing.
Well, glad to hear that. But could you walk us through the benefits to both issuers and investors of being active participants of the NASD?
For issuers, we provide an easy entry market, lightly regulated. The regulator is not particularly heavy. Lightly regulated, as I said, our focus is more on ensuring an orderly market, ensuring that what is promised is done, as opposed to regulating the issuers. So it's slightly regulated for the issuers. It is very easy to enter and to exit that market as well. So you can bring your shares in at a certain time very quickly. We onboarded the shares of NGX, for example, within 48 hours of it being available. And it's an easy exit market as well. It also offers listing opportunities. You can raise rights, you can raise any other form of capital that you want on that platform as well. That's for the issuers. For investors, it is an orderly market. We use an automated trading, automated matching engine. It goes through the CSCS for clearing. It has a T+3 clearing cycle. So it's very orderly, quite disciplined, with information on prices, with transparency on what has been traded at any one time as well. So for both of them, it's a win-win and a very light market.
So with all the benefits that you've mentioned now, why is NASD not a household name yet? To those, I think there has been a lot of focus on the more traditional exchange. In that market, we have got a community of 140 brokers, 140 brokerage houses, and over 200 brokers. We have got 40 companies trading on that platform. Probably the most well-known right now would probably be NGX. But the shares of CSCS, for example, is trading on that platform. The shares of Dufil are trading on that platform. So there are quite a few securities trading on that platform as well. To those who do know, and we used to be appearing once in a while on channels, to those who do know, it is quite well known. I believe that it would receive a lot more coverage as it expands. Well, we'd also be looking forward to that. But do you have major institutional investors like PFAs, for example, trading regularly on the market? Well,
the market tends to see a lot of bulk movement. So rather than it being a day trading market where people would get in and out and there'd be a fair deal of movement in the price of the shares during the day, what we tend to see on that market are the larger block trades, either to move a large chunk of securities from one holder to another or a major restructuring and so on. That's what we tend to see a lot more than trading activity on a daily basis, buying and selling in and out of shares. That said, yes, we do see we also see more of the private equity investors, longer term investors, rather than the PFAs coming into that market. I think the PFAs over the last couple of years probably had more of a focus on fixed income instruments as well, which are not really heavily traded on that platform.
Okay, so recently we've seen a bullish trend at NASD. Now, what's driving those sentiments?
First, I could say is performance of those companies. You would see the power, and I wouldn't want to single out any one company and say this one is doing particularly better than that one. But there is a certain level of performance on some of the companies that are in there, and I think as more and more investors start analyzing investment opportunities and start looking at the potential and the returns and the value for the naira that they're putting down in investments, they are tending towards some of those securities. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing is there is a certain amount of pent-up demand as a result of how slow last year was for everyone, both investors who were invested and those who wanted to buy. It was a slow activity period, and I think some of that is now being released and it's manifesting in terms of how the prices are moving on the market.
All right, Mr. Jomale, well, we'll keep our eyes at the market and see how things play out in that space. Thank you for spending your time with us tonight on the program.
Thank you very much for having us.